Hello, good evening. I am Marcela. I am an intern in international advocacy at SIAMS. Good evening, Olivia. Good evening, Nicole and Anna. Good evening to everyone who has come to participate in this webinar with us. Today is certainly a very important occasion, not only for the coalition, but for all of us to hear more about what Olivia has to say. Olivia is now a grown up woman, but she was born from surrogacy. And we are very grateful for her willingness and courage to have this conversation and share more of her story with us today. Our organization is a grouping of feminist and human rights organizations committed to abolishing the practice of surrogacy at a national and international levels. Mispresented as a medical answer to infertility, we can describe surrogacy as a social and commercial practice that reaches global scales, crossing borders previously considered distant. Objectively, we can describe surrogacy as the practice of recruiting a woman with or without payment to carry one or more children, whether or not conceived with her own oocytes, for the purpose to delivering them to one or more persons who wish to be designated as the parents of these children. The practice of surrogacy encompasses a large number of agents, and as a social practice, it is implemented by human reproduction companies in an organized production system, including governments, laboratories, doctors, lawyers, agencies, and more intermediaries. So, in a world where the fragmentation of women's bodies and lives, as well as those of children's, is something still considerable, our initiative is a call to the ownership of the understanding that human dignity is indisposable. Today's aim, in addition to presenting surrogacy or discussing its effects, is to give Olivia the floor and to listen to her as someone born from surrogacy. So, again, Olivia, thanks very much for being here today. And I will pass my word to my colleague, Nico. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcela, for that kind introduction. So now we're going to delve into enlightening discussion that will give us valuable insights into the perspective of an advocate against surrogacy. Olivia, so we're eager to hear from you. To get started, maybe could you please share a bit about yourself, who you are, and a little bit about your background?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. It's a pleasure to be speaking here and to be able to give my side of the story and to give a bit of insight of a grown adult on surrogacy. Where to begin? I'm 31 years old now. I was born in the United States, in Kentucky, Louisville, to be precise. 31 years ago, so from surrogacy, from a surrogate mother, and I was born from what we call traditional surrogacy. Traditional surrogacy is that there was no egg donor. The egg came from my surrogate mother. So in my case, my surrogate mother is my birth mother, is my biological mother. I grew up between France and the United States, and I've always had that feeling that something was off about my birth, because my parents never told me about the fact that I was born from surrogacy. They've always hidden it from me. And but I always knew inside of me that something was off. And later on in life, I kind of did my research, and I found out that in Louisville, in 1991, surrogacy was, it was a practice that was always commonly done. And then I realized that I was most certainly born from a surrogate. And then I met my husband, Matthias, 10 years ago. And I talked with my mother-in-law actually a lot about all of this, all of my issues, my psychological issues, my issues with like just life. And I told her that I was born from a surrogate mother and that I was sure of it, but I had no proof of it. And what she did is that she bought me a DNA kit test for my 30th birthday, and that's when I actually found out. That's when I had like the real proof that I was born from a surrogate mother. As I in my, I mean, when you take the DNA test, you can see that you have like whatever ethnic background, but you also have DNA matches, and I was matched with my cousin and my uncle.
Okay. With that background, also, so you never managed to ask your parents when you were feeling this way, kind of like to ask them when you were feeling this thing that you didn't feel good, or try
No,
talking to
I
them?
never asked. I never asked, and I felt like I wasn't allowed to ask. I kind of
Okay.
grew up in this environment where that was a question that could not be asked. They never told me, okay, Olivia, you're not allowed to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up in an environment where I understood that I wasn't allowed to talk about it. So I just shut my mouth as a nice little young child that I was, naive, and I didn't say anything. I never said anything, ever.
Okay. So your parents don't, do they know actually now that you know once you got the DNA test? Did you
Yes,
talk to
they
your
do know.
parents?
I
Okay.
didn't talk to my parents actually.
Okay.
Um, I kind of, I mean, my story is very long, but I kind of threw a fit at them, and I told them that I knew something was off
Mm-hmm.
before taking the DNA test. Because they had, I mean, they had done something completely mean and horrible to me. So I threw a fit at them, and during our argument, I told them, okay, I know something's off. You've just been withholding this from me for so long, and I'm sick of it. And we stopped talking for a while. They brushed off the question. They never came back to it. And then after I took the DNA test and I had proof, it was my husband that went and saw my parents and that actually told them that I knew with proof. And so after that, my mother sat me down, and without anyone around us, she sat me down, just her and I. And she told me, she was like, okay, well, you know what? You're not my daughter. I'm not your mother. This is how it went. Sorry. And then we stopped talking and we went on with life. It was kind of harsh, but that's just how we communicate, and um that's how our relationship was. We don't talk to each other very much. We don't share a lot of emotions. But that's how she was brought up as well. So it's not her fault. It's just how she is. Um but yeah, we've always had a quite complicated relationship.
Okay. So knowing about this after you knew, do you think that changed for you? That all the questions you had about yourself and now knowing, did it change in some way for you? Did you feel different? Was that the impulse for you to start talking about surrogacy, opening yourself up a little bit more?
N- It it didn't shock me because I always knew, like I said, it was always in me. I always had that just in my mind. It was implemented in my mind that I was born from surrogacy, and I have my best friend that can testify for me. I have people around me that just always heard me talk about surrogacy and how I was born from a surrogate mother. So it didn't really shock me. It didn't change anything in my life because I mean it didn't answer questions. The only thing that it answered was my ethnic background, which I found quite interesting because I have some Norwegian blood, I have some Lithuanian blood, whatever. That part was quite that was really interesting, actually. But what shocked me and what changed the most was that I found a family. My biological mother's side is incredible. My biological mother is someone who's quite mentally unstable, so I don't really have a relationship with her. But I did get to find a half brother, three half sisters, and a whole family that's willing to take me in, and I mean, take me in as theirs, even if they haven't known me for the last 31 years. So that was that's like the best present I could ever have had in my entire lifetime. Um, I started talking about surrogacy and the fact that I was against surrogacy on TikTok because it was therapeutical for me. I needed it it's kind of like a journal, you know, instead of writing, I talk, and talking about my story and my side of the story and how I find every aspect of surrogacy negative is soothing for me and my soul. And I also jumped to talking about it because I have proof now. No one can say that I'm not born from surrogacy because I literally have DNA proof. And that's, yeah, that's that.
Interesting. And when you started sharing like your views against surrogacy on TikTok, did you face like any challenges or receive any threats for expressing your opinions?
I didn't receive any threats. A lot of people didn't really understand where I came from in the beginning, but more as I talk on TikTok, the more I express my feelings and I demonstrate like real case scenarios where surrogacy just goes wrong, the more people are open to the fact that surrogacy is a bad choice, is not possible, and should be abolished. So I'm kind of educating people via TikTok. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm a humble person, I swear. It's just I feel like people don't know enough about surrogacy. They need to be educated. That's like it's so important to educate people on surrogacy. People just think that it's a beautiful little like butterfly world where everything goes right and that love is sufficient and that the child will grow up and everything will be fine. But no, no, not everything will be fine. We're using wombs. We're paying for women's uteruses. We're buying children. I mean, there's nothing right with surrogacy. And yeah, the more I talk, the more people are like, oh, okay, well, I'm actually against it now. And that's the best feeling in the world, having changed just a few minds, and giving another perspective on surrogacy.
Yeah, I definitely think that like this, giving your testimony on your story, it's something that makes people understand more than actually reading an article because you experiencing it, being part of it, you're the better person to explain what actually surrogacy is and can help
Mm-hmm.
other people understand. And with your advocacy work against surrogacy, has this affected your family in any way?
Absolutely not.
No?
No, 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 no. Nothing has changed. My husband is extremely supportive of me uh, fighting against surrogacy. He's against it. Like I think he's even more against it than I am. And no, it hasn't changed anything. I mean, I talked to my parents about me fighting against surrogacy. They're not um they can't stop me from fighting against it. They understand where I'm coming from, but I have to express myself. I have to heal my wounds and my wounds. Sorry, not my wombs, even though it's kind of it kind of works out as well. But I do have to, you know, I have to talk about it to at least. I mean, I had a hard time. as an adolescent, as a young adult. I couldn't build myself as a person, and now I'm trying to construct a second version of myself. And by doing this, it's helping me a lot. So I'll do it even if they're not willing to listen to me.
True. At the end, it's your story to tell.
Exactly.
And for this also in the TikTok, because it's the social media where you express more of your stories, and like you said, you use it as your journal. Have you had the approach of other surrogate children or mothers talk to you and like identify with you, or like you've heard other testimonies from other people?
I haven't had any other testimonies of surrogate children, which is really sad for me. But then again, I understand because I had the chance of taking that DNA test and being matched with people from my family. I'm sure that's not the case of a lot of people that were born 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, lying about it was a lot easier because, I mean, surrogacy wasn't, I mean, it was legal, but it wasn't really talked about. And I mean, I could have gone through my life with the lie because on my birth certificate, my real birth certificate was sealed at my birth. So with my real biological mother, who was my surrogate, that was sealed at like at my birth, and then my intended parent was put on my birth certificate. There's nowhere in that birth certificate where it's written that I was born from surrogacy or whatever. So I guess a lot of children born from surrogacy will never know. They'll just be, they'll just have that instinct, or they'll be a little bit, sorry for the word, but a little bit screwed up. They'll grow up with mental problems. They'll grow up with problems, and that's really really sad. Um, but however, did have I do have intended parents that talk to me that regret uh, going through surrogacy. And I do have, unfortunately, I do have surrogate mothers that confided in the fact that they are on the border of suicide because they did surrogacy. So they told me their life story, and it's really shocking. And I'm trying to help them as much as I can. But they confided in me. They told me their stories, and I swear to you, it's heartbreaking. It's horrible. I think of this one mother who is in France, and she was used as a surrogate, and her little girl is 11 months old now, and she's battling to not commit suicide. I'm going to cry, I think, but because her story is horrible. Um, she's battling to not commit suicide because she gave her child. She gave her child, and she feels guilty. She feels bad. She feels sad. She feels like she's been used because she did this for a couple of friends, and this couple of friends don't even ask if she's okay. Like, she's alone. No one cares about her. No one even asks if she feels okay. So she gets a couple of pictures of her little girl from time to time, but she's alone. She's freaking alone. And yeah, she's borderline suicidal. And I'm trying to tell her that she has to be strong because maybe one day her daughter will want to talk to her mother and will want to hear her side of the story. Um, but that story killed me. It killed me. And I'm sure a lot of surrogate mothers feel this way. It's just a lot of surrogate mothers don't feel confident enough of speaking out. And I hope with my TikTok, more surrogate mothers will come to me and talk to me, and more intended parents as well will come to me and express their why they're against surrogacy now.
That's true. I was just going to mention that I think you are helping people to, especially women, children, raise their voice, to talk to you, to also share their stories. Like you said, it's something that's need to be teach that people to understand. And what you're doing on TikTok is amazing. Actually, it's helping a lot of women, I guess, to open up and talk. And at one point, even have other accounts of TikToks, other blogs to share all these testimonies about what's happening with the subject of surrogacy. Actually,
Yeah, I hope one day I could even open an association of like just to help these people, just to be there for them because they're not alone. They feel alone, and I understand that they feel alone because it's horrible, because surrogacy just it screws up children, but it also screws up these poor mothers that are sometimes forced into surrogacy, that sometimes don't even have the choice to be a surrogate mother because they have bills to pay, and being a surrogate is the only way out, which is the case of my biological mother, I thoroughly believe. So yeah, it's just, I don't even understand sometimes why surrogacy exists, to be honest.
it's true. Now that you mentioned this about your biological mother, did you ask her why she did this, or it's just some intuition that you have and you never actually talked to your biological mother?
My biological mother, yes, I asked her why she did it. She unfortunately lost a child not
Okay.
too long before I was conceived, um, from a dramatic event. Uh, I won't be getting into details, but it was really, really, really bad. Um, and I think she felt guilty because of it. And then she just wanted to donate her body to a family that couldn't have a child, and yeah, and she felt like she had to repay life in that way. That's how she put it. Um, but then again, she also had 4 children to nourish. She didn't really have a stable job, so life wasn't easy on her either. Surrogacy is a good way out, financially speaking, for a lot of women in the United States.
That's true. And with all this also, what do you think are some important like ethical concerns or risks about surrogacy that you think everyone should know about?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part of the question.
That what are some important like ethical concerns or risks about surrogacy that you think everyone should know about?
Well, I mean, first of all, women that are in situations like maybe my birth mother where they're mentally just not stable. I mean, we're using women that are sometimes in financial situations that are very complicated, um to have them have a baby. I mean, that is ethically speaking, that's just horrible. um and I think we're just forgetting about all the physic I mean the psychological aspect of what the children will have to bear throughout its life. um it's not ethical to take away a baby, a newborn, from its mother. I think that's my main concern today, as well as paying to use a human body to have a baby, which is, I mean, that's the most, that's absolutely disgusting. But we're also buying babies, which ethically speaking is just terrible. And on top of that, we're taking away newborns from their mothers that, I mean, that had them in their tummies for 9 months, um, and we're giving them away to another family. So the entire thing is non-ethical, even when it's not paid, like in Canada, for example. It's not it's not ethical. It'll never be ethical. There's nothing ethical in surrogacy. And I just want to talk about Canada for a second, but
Sure.
they do have I mean, I read a bit of laws on Canada. They have up until $22,000 that are reimbursed for the surrogacy. So there is money in some ways, maybe not as much as in the US, but there is a little bit of money that's between the surrogate and the intended parents or the agency, whatever. So it'll never be ethical, ever, ever, ever. We're treating with humans. We're selling humans. We're buying uteruses. This is just, it's too much, and it should be abolished worldwide.
Definitely. Yes. With this subject also about the families, how do you respond actually to people who think surrogacy is a good option, like for their families that can't have children on their own?
It was the case of my family 30 years ago, and the problem is not if it's a good option or not. It's the question is that why is it an option today? Why are we making it an option? These people are just they're I mean they're infertile. I kind of, I feel bad for them. They're infertile. They have to treat themselves because it's, I mean, it's how do you say deuil? It's kind of like forget the word in English. I'm sorry, but they have to mourn the fact that they're infertile. And and so, well, they turn towards surrogacy because it's an option, and it shouldn't be an option. The problem isn't the people that are turning towards surrogacy, it's the fact that surrogacy is out there and it is an option for me.
Yes.
That's why I don't hate my parents. That's why I don't blame them. I'll never blame them for using surrogacy because it was just an option that they took um, when they thought they didn't have the choice. But if it wasn't there, they wouldn't have gone through surrogacy and they just wouldn't have had children, or they would have adopted.
Of course.
But surrogacy was there.
True. So the option that you would give people would be to adopt children and give them actually a house. So there's so many children around the world that could be adopted and that
There's
need a home.
so many children willing to have a home, to have a happy life, to have a mom and dad that love them. And don't get me wrong, there is trafficking in adoption as well throughout the world. Adoption isn't just perfect, as a lot of people say as well. There's a lot of bad things going on with adoption, but adoption is just it's necessary. It's human wise, it's just we have to have adoption. We have to get these children out of places that are terrible and try to give them a better house. However, surrogacy isn't a necessity. Absolutely not. It'll never be a necessity. We're 7 billion people on this earth. We don't need to go on and buy wombs and create babies and buy babies. It's just ridiculous.
Exactly. And so what advice can you have for people who are thinking about surrogacy but also wants to understand like the concerns that you have? Like somebody that approaches you and they're thinking about that option, but they hear your stories and are concerned. So like what advice can you give them?
Like they want to go through surrogacy? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like that's their first option. That's what they want to do, but they see your TikTok, see like the consequences. That's a horrible thing, but they want to hear maybe your side of the story. Like, what advice would you give them for them not to go through the process of surrogacy?
It's not worth it. It's not worth it. I think people just don't wrap that love isn't sufficient. That the love that they're going to give to this child won't be sufficient. we're always, as a child that's born from surrogacy, we're always going to try and find the other half of ourselves, always. And there's always going to be trouble, mental problems, or problems like with during adolescence. There's always going to be some issues because of surrogacy as a child born from it. So love isn't sufficient. It'll never be sufficient. Uh, Unfortunately, it would be too easy. And then there is adoption. There are plenty of newborns that need to be adopted. There are plenty of young children that need to be loved. There's so many children, and that maybe try and think about adoption first. And yeah, that's what I would give as advice.
Okay, thank you.
And I think it's really important also to remind people that what surrogacy really is. People, it's buying a, like, paying for a womb, paying for a woman's body, buying a baby, like literally buying a human being. We're forgetting what it really is and what it really means. So I think we really need to remind people this all the time. And if I have to do it every single day for the rest of my life, I will be doing it, because people just forget about it. Because in the media, people show surrogacy as this perfect thing where everything's fine and surrogate moms are happy and surrogate babies are happy and intended parents are just so happy as well. But we forget what surrogacy is at the base.
That's true. That's totally true. And I think your TikToks and you talking on the social media is where more people actually look and read and get informed about this matter. So do you have like any further plans or aspirations on your TikTok with being an advocate against surrogacy that you want to achieve?
I just want to educate people. In France, it's not legal yet, but people are talking about it. So I would love to start educating people now so that it never comes to France. It's never legalized in France. So that's my main that's my main focus on TikTok, educating people, telling people what surrogacy is. And eventually I want to create an association of surrogate born children and intended parents and surrogate mothers, and just have a safe place for them to talk and not be judged. So we really have to differentiate between traditional and gestational. I can't say the word in English. I don't know why. Traditional is where the surrogate mother is also the biological mother, and gestational surrogacy is where there's an egg donor that's used, and the surrogate mother is just an incubator. Unfortunately, I hate using these words, but it's how it is. And yes, absolutely, I'm against it. I'm against all forms of surrogacy. And why am I against gestational surrogacy? Is the fact that it's been proved that in the womb, a baby creates a lot of links with its mother throughout the 9-month period of time. It hears her voice, it hears and it tastes what she's eating, it feels her emotions. There's a lot happening in the womb. This link is supposed to last after the birth, and it doesn't. The baby, the newborn that's going to get out into the real world after birth, has first of all to kind of, make that big jump into the real world, and it's cold, it feels awful, and they're asking the baby to be detached from its mother that nourished him for the last 9 months. So that is absolutely traumatizing for a newborn. it doesn't matter that the surrogate is biologically linked to the mother or not. Uh, what's horrible is that this baby is going to have to be separated from the mother that fed him for the last 9 months and took care of him for the last 9 months, and then just shot off to another family. And that baby will never understand. And that is a traumatic experience. And we underestimate how traumatizing that is. And for that, I will be against gestational surrogacy forever. And I'm against all types of surrogacy anyway. So
We have more answers, more questions, sorry. I don't know if you want to take a look or if you want me to go by the questions, if you don't mind, and just ask them to you.
Athena Davis, you asked, would you agree with the statement that surrogacy breaks people, breaks the mother for giving away the child, breaks the child because of the shock of the separation? Yes, absolutely. I mean, how can it not break someone? How can the surrogate mother, I mean, the surrogate mother is told to not share any link with the child within the womb. She is, I mean, it's she thinks, and she's been made to think that she's not supposed to have a link, but the baby inside the womb will link to its mother, and that's just natural. That's human. That's instinctive. It's, you can't help it. You can't tell that baby that the mother that's feeding him is well, you're supposed to is I mean, you can't tell that baby that it's supposed to be detached from the mother that's feeding him inside the womb. So yeah, of course it breaks people, breaks kids, breaks surrogate mothers, it breaks also intended parents. Like I said, my intended parents, I think, were broken from it. They didn't expect it to finish like it finished. So yeah, it breaks people. Of course, it breaks people.
For also that answer. There's one that I think it's been rounding a lot, and it's also been in the media lately. And it's, how do you answer homosexual couples, men who want a family?
Having a child is not a right. That's how I answer it. It's not a right. It's not because you're infertile that you have to have a child. It's not because you're homosexual that you have to have a child. It's not a right. It's not a given right for you to have a child. So, you know, it just doesn't work. Unfortunately for them and for infertile couples, surrogacy shouldn't even be an option. It's just as it is. I don't know how to put it in any other words, but yeah, a child isn't a right. There is no right to children. Children have rights, but we have no right to children ever.
They're also asking of how is your relationship with your father?
That's a good question. I love my father very dearly, but the relationship was difficult. He is my biological father, for information. Um, it's been difficult. We don't talk a lot about the subject. However, he has been opening up lately. Since I've been doing these TikToks, actually, he's been opening up a lot more, and so he's trying. At least he's trying. But he's covered he's covered this life for so many years that that opening up for him is huge, huge. So I know he's making a huge step. Our relationships haven't our relationship hasn't always been perfect, but I mean, what relationship is perfect?
Exactly. It always happens.
I love my parents. I'll always, I mean, I'll be there when they die. I'll be there when they're sick. I'll be there, and it, even with my non-biological mother, I'll always be there for her. She, it's not, I don't I don't hate her at all. I love them.
There's also a question, and it says, "Hello, I'm Montserrat, a clinic psychologist. Olivia, first of all, thank you for opening about this topic. I have two questions. The first one is, have you thought about writing a book about this? And the second, could you tell us about some difficulties you have detected in the mental health of surrogate mothers and the children that are born from this practice? Greetings from Mexico."
I love Mexico. Hi from Mexico. Hi from France. Oh, yes, I'm thinking about writing a book, of course. I've been actually in the process of writing a book because it's once again therapeutical for me, and I think it's important to have at least a written. I want it to be written so that at least it could be broadcasted easier throughout the media. And that maybe one day the media will let me talk, because as of right now, they're not letting me talk because in France, being against surrogacy isn't very well sought. And the second question was the psychological aspects of like what traumatized me.
I guess.
Yeah, the fact that I was abandoned traumatized me the most. For me, I I lived it as an abandonment, um, and I feel as if I was abandoned by my birth mother, as I was sold. There's nothing worse for a child to feel that way, to feel that at one moment in my life I was literally sold for a check. Um, so it screwed me up very badly. I have always had very complicated relationships with women in general, especially older women, because I've always searched the mother in these women. I've also had problems with my other relationships because I was scared to be abandoned and to be rejected. So I kind of smothered people, like my friends. I always smothered them. I always kept them within my reach. I suffocated them, and and they eventually left. So I was alone a lot of the time. And then recently I was diagnosed with a bipolar disorder. So I do thoroughly believe that that trauma led to having a, I mean a literal mental issue out of it. Um, and yeah, that's my psychological issues as of today. I've had a hard life. I've been Things haven't been easy for me. I it's been difficult. That's all I can say. Sorry, with a lot of emotions. But it's been difficult. It's been a hard ride. Um, and uh, and yeah, so that's why I need to talk about it, and I need also for people to understand that uh, how surrogacy can affect children, how being abandoned at birth can can destroy you, how being exchanged for a check can destroy you as well. And I've all my life I've thought that I wasn't enough for people, because apparently I wasn't enough at birth for my mother to keep me, and money was more important for her than me. So yeah, that's how it screwed me up.
Thank you for sharing this. This is very important, and you have a team here that supports you, that will always listen to you.
Thank you.
And this space actually for you, this space is for you and for people to understand what you're going through, that it's a very difficult situation for you and in general for other people. And with this, it just helps
Yeah,
a lot of people.
and
So
I
I
hope
hope that you feel all the good feelings all people who are here this evening
yes, I
are
do. I do.
sending to you, and
Anna,
you see all the good comments people are doing, and
you
we all
have
appreciate
been
very, very much.
fabulous. I appreciate everything that you've done for me. You guys have been just like the kindest women, and I feel so safe with you. So thank you. this is why I'm here, actually, because I feel like I can actually talk and I can actually be myself. So thank you.
That's how you should always feel, safe, because you're an
But
amazing and
it's
empowering woman.
thank you.
Moving on to our
Yes.
questions that we have. So it says, Olivia, thank you so much for sharing your story. I would like to share with you that here in Brazil, we had only the solitary surrogacy. So I know a woman who is known as a surrogate mother to their gay bosses because they were always nice bosses to her. So do you think it will be harder for us to combat non-commercial surrogacy because it relies on women's socialization? And this is more subtitle.
So hold on, let me reread that question. I would like to share
No
with you
worries.
that here there is a sorry, so I know a woman who is now a surrogate mother to their gay bosses because they were always nice bosses to her. Do you think it will be harder for us to combat non-commercial surrogacy? Because, yeah, that's terrible. That's like emotionally, it's horrible. It's terrible. How can that's a huge amount of pressure on a woman just because they're nice bosses. You have to give them a baby. That's, I'm sorry, but I'm very shocked about what I'm reading.
Yeah,
Um,
it's true.
that's for me that's even worse than commercial surrogacy because we're it's kind of forcing them, forcing the woman to surrogacy, and they're her bosses. So
She doesn't
she
have an
maybe
option
feels like
practically.
she owes them something, like she has to give them something, and that's terrible for a woman, terrible. And she owes them nothing, literally nothing. If she does her job correctly, she just does her job correctly, and she's a woman and she has a career and she's fabulous and she's I'm sure she's an amazing woman, but she does not owe them a baby. So yeah, I honestly think that that's worse than commercializing surrogacy because that's just
Definitely.
putting pressure on women, and they shouldn't have that pressure ever, ever.
Yes, definitely. Um, Now taking it back to most of your family, it says, did your own experience of motherhood impact you on this topic? So
Of motherhood?
yeah, like being a mother, did it impact you with this topic of surrogacy, you having children, I guess?
Yes, a lot. Actually, when I have three children. Um, my daughter's 5, my son is 4, and my other son is 2. And when I was pregnant with my first child, Eleanor, she, I mean, when I went to the medical um, appointments, they always asked me, "Oh, well, what kind of problems like medical issues you have on your mother's side?" And I always told them like I have no idea. I do not know if I have high blood pressure on my mother's side or if I have heart problems or if I like all these questions just came up and I'm like, oh man, well, I'm gonna give birth to this baby and I have no idea what my medical issues are on my mother's side. I have no idea. And I flipped out. I was so scared. Scared for my baby, not for me.
Yeah, of
I
course.
was scared for my baby because well, I didn't know what she was 25% of her blood was made of. So that I started really, really being scared at that point for my child. Then came Theodore, and I was scared again. And then came August, and I mean, I was scared as well. But throughout all of these 3 pregnancies, every time I gave birth, I was like, I could never give away this child. How could at one point my birth mother, my biological mother, decide that she would give me out for a check? That that made me hate surrogacy more than anything at that point. I think that's what's made me like take a step up towards hating surrogacy. I hated it even more after being pregnant, and not knowing also a part of the genes of my children, and not knowing what the risks were for them maybe throughout their lifetime. I was just so angry, so angry.
That was basically your breaking point to actually have all that anger towards the matter
Yeah,
of surrogacy.
exactly. It was kind of like, like I'm just a ball of energy that I was growing, and now I'm just throwing it out there and hopefully it'll explode somewhere. But yeah, it grew in me, and and it caused a lot of anger. Yeah.
There's another question. It's ask what would you compare your experience with one of an adopted child?
We have the same problem with being abandoned, the same issues growing up, I suppose, with being abandoned. Um, However, I guess with a child that's been abandoned and then adopted, we're trying to give him a better life. I mean, like I said, it's a human necessity to have adoption. So we're trying to give him a better life. We're trying to make his life better. We're trying to, get him out of a horrible situation to offer him a better life. Surrogacy, it's not really that. We're just signing a contract and buying a child, and hopefully it works out. Um, it's not the same situation. However, the feelings could be the same. That sentiment of abandonment is the same in abandoned children, of course. And I guess we both look for who we are throughout the time. Like abandoned children sometimes need to go back to the country they were born in, or they need to see I don't know, whatever. They need to go find their moms. Um, so we share that feeling as well. But in my case, it was hidden. In children that have been abandoned and then adopted, it's easier to tell them. Uh, People usually don't lie when they adopt children. People lie a lot when they do go through surrogacy. They do lie a lot to their children. So I guess that's the differences I see between us. But we share a lot because there's because of TikTok and what I say on TikTok, a lot of people a lot of children that are now adults that have been adopted, they come to me and they're like, oh, I share the exact same problems as you. I can't hold a job. I have trouble with creating contact with people. When I feel rejected, I feel really bad. I mean, there's a lot of similarities between us, a lot. But the difference is at birth. What happens at birth? I was bought. Unfortunately, I was bought, and an adopted child. We're trying just to give him a better life, and that is so important. We need adoption today. We need it.
I guess we discussed before.
Yes.
There's also, because you talked about France, so they said that thank you so much for your testimony and your work. You said your main focus is to fight against surrogacy in France, where media tried to make the law change. Have you been able to reach someone from the government or the parliament?
No, absolutely not. Nothing. No one. I'm trying. I'm seriously trying. I'm trying to pull all the strings I can. I have a woman journalist that contacted me, that Anna knows actually, who's been helping a lot. She's trying to pull all the strings, but it's very, very, very difficult. I'm shut down all the time. And so no, I don't have any contact with either government, parliament, or whatsoever. And it's even harder to get into media, to testify in the media. There is a documentary that's coming out on DNA. So a journalist did that documentary on me, but it's not really on surrogacy. There's another documentary that a journalist is trying to get out there on surrogacy and on the negative aspects of surrogacy. And she's working with me. However, she's having a very, very, very hard time selling the project to media. Like everyone's shutting her out. So we're going to keep trying until it works, but we need it to work because we're going to have elections in a couple of years, and we're going to start talking about it. So it's important to start now and plan for the future.
Definitely, especially if the elections are coming up. You also mentioned right now about the DNA, and there's a question actually, and it says, is it also more risky if it's not the woman's DNA? There's more complications, example, preeclampsia. Either way, women keep their children DNA in their bodies after birth for a long time. So maybe explain a little bit.
It is true. I did recently see a documentary on the problem. There is an exchange of DNA between the baby and the mother for a very long period of time, and I'm not sure how long that period is. But yeah, it's true. It is more risky. It is. There are a lot more complications, and there is an exchange of DNA. I'm actually going to do a TikTok about that soon, showing it's a gynecologist that talks about that exchange of DNA between the baby and the mother.
That's very interesting too. And
yeah,
like I said,
there's so many things that we don't know.
Yes.
And the problem is that we assume everything. We just assume everything's fine. We assume that the baby in the womb doesn't feel anything. We assume that at birth kids don't remember anything. Of course we do. Of course. Of course there's a memory. Of course there's trauma. Of course the fetus remembers everything. Of course. Of course. It's just people don't want to believe. That's the problem. And they're not willing to dig up on the information and try to learn more about what happens in the womb and what happens at birth. Oop. Sorry.
No worries. I think we can have 2 more questions and then I'll pass the questions to Anna. There's another one at the end, in case you want to read it. It talks about women who gave up a child for adoption in France when they have the possibility to be supported before the birth. They explain to me they don't think they abandoned their baby, but they wish that the baby would be loved by their adoptive parents. So what do you think about this?
But I'm not talking about adoption. I'm not judging women that have I mean, sometimes life isn't as it is. I'm not talking about adoption. I'm talking about surrogacy. I do not blame these women that give up their infant for adoption. I don't judge them. I'll never judge them. They have it's just their life. I can't judge them. What I'm judging is surrogacy, is buying babies. It's renting uteruses. That's what I'm fighting. I'm not fighting adoption, not at all, at all. What she's calling is I think what she's talking about is accouchement sous X, which means that they know they're pregnant, or they know they're pregnant at the end of their pregnancy or whatever, and they freak out, and then they gave birth, and on the birth certificate it says that there's no mother. They have their reasons, and I am no one to judge these women. Absolutely not. I want to fight for the rights of women. I don't want to put them down, not at all.
And the last one that we're gonna answer from the question and ask is, have you needed psychological help at any moment to help you deal with the consequences of surrogacy for you?
No, I never had help when I was younger. I never had psychological help. I had to get psychological help myself when I was older, when I was 20-ish, because it was getting really bad. So I've had psychological help for the last 10 years. And it's just now that they've actually diagnosed me with bipolar disorder, so it didn't work out too well. But I would have needed, I think, to be told the truth, of course, at my birth, but I also would have needed psychological help since my birth. It's a very big trauma, and you can't just ignore it and not have psychologists and psychiatrists follow you. I think every child that is born from surrogacy should have some sort of psychological help, and from the very beginning, not when they start acting weird or start being or having weird tendencies or start acting up. Kind of have to prevent all of that with psychological help since the beginning.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We have a question from Marcella.
Yes, please.
Well, to ask the question.
I just saw something on your Instagram today that you describe yourself as against surrogacy and feminist. So I would like to know if there is a relation between these two elements of your self description. If, like, being feminist maybe influences your position against surrogacy, or in the other sense.
Of course. No, of course. I will always fight for the rights of women. I will always fight for women. I will always be for women, and I love women, and I love being a woman also. So when you're a feminist, you can only be against surrogacy. Using a uterus and giving money to buy people's bodies and women's bodies is just against feminism. It just isn't compatible at all. And I also want to help these women to, I mean, I don't, it's kind of, how would I put it? It's correlated. One doesn't go without the other. It's just how it is. You have to be a feminist to be against surrogacy. I mean, I defend the child's perspective of it a lot, but I also want to protect these women that are used to produce these babies and sometimes are abused in the process of surrogacy. And yeah, that's being a feminist to me.
I think you wanted to ask some questions to Olivia, or do you want me to answer?
I would like to just to address one or two of the questions that were already on the question and answers.
Yes,
Yoshi Yanagiara asked also a very important question, which is, I found some of your experiences very similar to people born with donated gametes. I would like to know your opinion about egg donation and embryo donation. I think this question is very important because maybe you will be contacted in the future if you want to create an NGO by other persons who are born from egg or sperm donation. So I don't know if you have yet an idea, an opinion on it, or if you intend to think about it, or if you just want to concentrate, to focus on surrogacy question.
I've been contacted by children born from egg donations, and we do share a lot of similarities. However, I am not totally against, and I'm not against egg donation, for the simple fact is that the mother that will give birth, that will carry the child, will give birth to the child, and then there's not the link will always be there. It's always the same mother, even if it's not her eggs. But we do, yes, share some similarities in our stories, And it's actually really interesting to see that even if the mother that held you in her womb, that gave birth to you, you're always going to have to try and find a part of your genes. That you're always going to have some questions that need to be answered. It's human to want to know where you're from, where do you come from. Um, so, so I'm not against it. No, I'm not. I'm actually not at all. I've already taken that position in the past.
Okay, thank you very much. And there is another question I would like to read, because I had one of my own, and it's very similar. The question from Cécile Char-Combarel. What about the children and the husband of the surrogate, of your surrogate mother? And my own question were, did your brother and sisters knew about you? Did they
Yes.
know, you mentioned them before, did they knew their mother were pregnant and gave birth to a child who was their sister?
Yes. They did know. Yeah, they knew. Everyone knew. They saw our mother pregnant of me go to the hospital and come back. They, my parents, the intended parents, my intended parents, offered them a trip to Disney World. They offered them a lot of gifts, so they knew everything. My brother wasn't very, he wasn't very emotional about it because he had just lost his baby brother like the others, but he was older, so he kind of focused on the loss of his brother. And he had to deal with his sisters as well. He kind of brought them up. He didn't have a very wonderful childhood. And however, my sister, who was the youngest, which is funny, she remembers it all. And she actually named, without knowing my name, without knowing I was going to be called Olivia, because my biological mother did not know I was called Olivia at that point, and she never said my name around her children. Not knowing that I was named Olivia, my sister called her own son Oliver, and he was born just one day after me on the 11th of December. So it's incredible. The story is fabulous. But yeah, they knew about it. They just had to deal with it. There was a second child after me. She had another surrogate baby after me as well. And we don't know about him at all. But yeah, everyone knew about it.
You mentioned the financial difficulties of surrogate mothers.
Yes.
First, when you started your intervention, and you said that we can understand that women can become surrogate mothers because of these difficulties. Do you have any idea if for your mother, surrogate mother, birth mother, the payments you received for your birth, it was enough to give up the financial difficulties?
I don't know if it was enough
for her to.
Well, she stopped working, so yes, it was enough to stop working, I guess. So it was the paycheck was good. It wasn't bad. It was good. It was very good, and it was enough to feed another 4 children. So I think at that point in her life, that was the most important thing to do: feed her children, pay her fees. My parents gave her a lot of other things, of course. I mean, it wasn't just what was in the contract. Like I said, they had Disney trips. She had other checks, whatever. But yes, it was sufficient for her to stop working completely.
But not completely enough to not do it again. You just said that after
she did it again. Yes.
She did it again. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. She did it again because she had to do it again. the problem with surrogacy. It's just taking these poor women that are in financial difficulty and using them. So they invent. I guess they try and these poor women, they try and say that it's by altruism, by the donation of their body, by God's gift, by whatever reason. But the real reason, I think, is financial. Is financial. And I feel bad for them. Honestly, I feel bad for my biological mother that at one point in her life she had to turn to surrogacy and use her body to make me and abandon me to pay for her food, for her children, for her house, for her, it's horrible, horrible.
I had a question now that you were talking about all this. I was actually reading an article that was published from Uganda, and there's this situation that's happening now that if they are surrogate mothers, they would get 4 months of school, but the condition is actually to have a child, and then they would get their studies. So
where is this? Uganda?
Yes, in Uganda.
Oh my God.
I'm doing all the research right now in Uganda. So you were talking about that women need this for like financial support, but now women also need it like for educational purposes, and they're doing it in a way that I feel it's not correct. I don't know how you feel about
it's horrible, horrible, absolutely horrible. There's no way, shape, or form to describe what they're doing. That is that's inhumane, just simply inhumane. Using a mother's body and bribing them with education. How could you do that to a human being? How is that even possible? How is that even legal?
I think that's why educating the people and letting women know that they have more options, that there's other ways, and that
yeah, definitely
carry a baby, it's not a solution actually.
How can we help you if not on TikTok? Is there something that we feminists can do to help you?
Share my story. Share as much as you can. We need to share. I need to have my vision out there for people to understand the negative aspect of surrogacy. It's really important because today, I mean, I'm talking about France because I'm in France, of course, but in France, as you know, we have this very beautiful vision of surrogacy, and I really want people to be educated on knowing what the negative aspects are, and it's not out there enough yet. We really need to work as a team, sharing my story, or maybe doing more of these webinars, or I don't know, anything, but we need to educate people. Like this is, that's what we need for me. I know medias shut us off a lot. I know journalists tend to shut us off a lot as well. We have a very hard time in getting our story out, but we are going to work through it. I'm sure as a team we can do it. Maybe we can start by another country and then bring it to France. Maybe, I don't know. We can work this out as a team over these multiple countries that we have here listening to us. I'm sure there's a way to get this story out at a higher level.
Let's hope so. Just one more question from Roberta Trucco. What you think about the doctor who do all the surrogacy stuff? Do you have an opinion on the medical personnel, medical staff who are doing this?
These people are, I mean, they have to do it in some case. I mean, or they quit their job and they go to another country, which is personally what I would do. But sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to and that you don't believe in to feed your family. So I don't know. I'm I'm not in the shoes of these doctors. I don't know their lives. I'm no one to judge them. So no, I don't have an opinion on them. It shouldn't exist. So sometimes, yeah, I'm sure they do it because they have to pay their monthly taxes or their wages or their whatever. I can't be against a human being for doing his job, you know. It's even if I'm against surrogacy, I can't judge them without knowing them.
And I would just like to be sure that you saw this proposal addressed by Athena Davis, who were asking you if you would be able to go testimony in Quebec. She lives in
I would love
Montreal.
to. I would love to. I actually lived in Montreal. Love the country. I'm actually wanting to move there soon. So I thought
Great.
the government was yeah, I would love to. Yeah, he did. I just want to precise, Macron said that it was a red line that shouldn't be crossed. However, our president, who is Emmanuel Macron, is not going to stay here forever. He's going to finish his mandate and it's going to be handed over to another president. And we have our ministre des Transports, our
Clément Beaune.
Clément Beaune, who is for surrogacy, who is pro surrogacy. So he's talking about it again. So when I say it's urgent and that we might talk about it in the next elections, I'm being serious. People in the government are already trying to talk about it. So it's urgent that we try and get the word out there and get the media in and try to educate people, as I said.
Thank you very much. We'll try to keep the time. So I would just like to share with you some thoughts to conclude this discussion, if you allow me. Of course, I would like to thank you, Olivia, really very much for your powerful testimony, and above all for your courage in bearing witness. Olivia is now sharing her feelings about what she has experienced throughout her life up to now. She's 30 years old. You saw you said it on your TikTok. As she said herself, her experiences are her own. There is no reason to believe that her feelings, your feelings, Olivia, are the same as those of other people born of a surrogate mother, but there is no reason to believe either that other persons born of a surrogate mother aren't going through the same feelings.
Exactly.
Like you, even worse. But you're an adult right now. And I would like to think just a little bit about children, because children are rarely mentioned. When the courts are called open to rule on surrogacy arrangements, they consider it essential to guarantee the child's link with the people who commissioned the arrangement. And not only lawyers, but also judges and even legislators are quick to use the term intended parent. The good of the child would be to be entrusted to the person who requested his or her birth, and more often than not, paid not only for the child to be born, but also for him or her mother to be separated from him or her. If we are committed to respecting human rights, as we feminists are, we must take into account what the International Convention on the Rights of the Child identifies as the best interest of the child. How can we do this? By taking account of the child's fundamental needs in every decision that concerns him or her. What are these needs? Very quickly, 3 big categories. The meta need for security, which includes physiological and health needs, the need for protection against all forms of violence, neglect, and danger, and the primordial need for emotional and relational security. How are these needs respected? When the child is ordered by contract, when several embryos are implanted, when embryo selection is carried out in order to keep only 1 or 2 embryos for no medical need, but only for personal convenience of the commissioning person. How are the best interests of the child taken into account when he or she is abruptly separated from his or her mother? And Olivia's testimony is very, very clear about this. In order to protect children, all children, the human rights doctrine provides for the following guarantees. I will only mention a few rights. The right to be treated with dignity. Is a newborn child treated with dignity when he or she is the subject of a transaction between adults and no institution provides for his or her own protection? The right to be protected against discrimination. And we might ask, is a child born of a surrogate mother protected against discrimination when, more often than not, he or she cannot know anything about the conditions of his or her birth? The right to be informed, the right to be heard. Which authority will be able to be seized by a surrogacy born child who would turn against the fact of having been the object of a commercial transaction? The right to effective assistance, the right to privacy, and right now, children born of a surrogate mother, their privacy is necessarily that which their commissioning persons want to impose on them with only the information they want to give to those children. The right of security, and so on and so forth. So please, let's think together about everything that children born of a surrogate mother are deprived of as a result of the political will to recognize only the rights of those who commissioned the procedure. The best interests of a child do not coincide with the interest of those who commissioned him or her. This evening, we have the opportunity to open up a space for this young woman born of a surrogate mother to exercise her right to express her opinions and her concerns. Let's hope that she, you, Olivia, will be heard, and that maybe others will join you in your fight, in our common fight. Thank you very, very much, Olivia. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Marcella. Thank you all for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Much.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk. Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you for your kindness and you've been an angel, really. You have.
Surrogate mothers are angels, not feminists.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you again all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.